Welcome everyone to Textiles and Tea with the Handweavers Guild of America. My name's Kathy Group and I am the advertising manager for HGA, and I get to be your host today. And this, believe it or not, is the 198th episode that we have done for Textiles and Tea. It's amazing. We want to thank our sponsor as always. Today we have an anonymous donor. Thank you so much. We appreciate all the donations that we get, whether you're an individual or a business or a guild. Thank you so much, and thank you to our donor. I hope she's watching today. As always, we'll take questions toward the end of the show. If you'll put them in the Q&A instead of the chat, I can see them and I can get to those more. But we love your chats. Keep those going. Those are great. Today we have Aneri Shah. And Aneri is a fiber and textile artist from India. She lives here now, investigates her complex connection to the sari, an emblem of her cultural heritage, yet is also an instrument for enforcing gender roles. She's a recent graduate with an MFA from Parsons School of Design in New York. She focuses on large-scale textural sculptural installations. It examines how Bollywood films from the 1930s to the 1980s challenged stereotypes and empowered women to redefine societal perceptions through their presentation and self-expression. Her work explores how the presentation of the feminine disrupted societal mores and explored the narrow perception of women's place in a society dominated by patriarchal distortion. We are so excited to have you here. Hi, Aneri.
Hi, Kathy. How are you?
I am good. Welcome.
Thank you for having me.
We're excited. So what is your favorite tea?
It has to be Indian masala chai. And it's a black tea for people who do not know it. And I particularly enjoy it with cardamom, mint leaves, and a bit of saffron.
Ah, okay. Okay. How do you spell it?
Masala chai? Oh, it's just like MASALA and CHAI. Chai or tea is the same thing.
Yeah. Oh, okay. Okay. All right. Just want to make sure. So tell us, how did you get started in fiber? I know you have this wonderful degree from Parsons, but how else what was the beginning of it all?
So it's funny, early on, my bachelor's was in fashion in India, and it was a very weird turn for me now that I think about it. With my bachelor's in fashion, I did my minors in textile design, not like textile arts or not like fiber arts. And then I went on in the industry, worked for a fast fashion company, and I only worked there for 8 months, and I was like ridiculed by it. So after that, I was like, okay, the only way to change that is actually go down to fiber and maybe like work with fiber itself. And that got me into fiber arts. I thought I would change like sustainable side of it, but then it just helped me channelize all these other narratives that I think I had to say in the through fiber.
Well, my first question is we're going to look at a piece right now. This was knitted, but it's so large. This is really an impressive wall hanging. And one thing I love about your work is the emblems, the symbols. They're just really left open to interpretation of what it means. You know, is that a kind hand or is that a grabbing hand? And I was curious because some artists really want their symbols to be clear and they want the viewer to know what it means. And some artists are like, no, I want the viewer to project onto the work what the meaning is. So what would you like? Do you want to have the symbol very obvious, or do you want it to come from the viewer?
So I do have a story behind this work, but it is open to interpretation as in how a viewer wants to see it. There's only like a two narrative to it. So this particular piece that you're showing here, it mirrors Droupadi and her inner strength. She is a character from Indian epic Mahabharata. And this particular piece, I named it as the Vastraharan, which is a Hindi term, which means disrobing. And it translates into like a legend of like reflection of ongoing struggle of patriarchal oppression that exists in India. So to give you an overall narrative, Draupadi was like a wife of Pandavas, and she was a symbol of like strength and resilience. So there was a game of dice between like two group of brothers, and the Pandavas, they lost the game of dice, and they put Draupadi in the court full of men to be humiliated because she was their bet. And when that happened, the brother-in-law started disrobing her. So that is the depiction that I was trying to show here. But when Draupadi started like praying, since it's a very religious mythological epic, her garment sari became endless, and she got saved from her humility and disrobing. So the interpretation could be either disrobing or the extension of her sari, and however the viewer wants to see it.
Well, that is so amazing. When you hear the background, it just changes everything. So thank you for sharing that. That's wonderful. Well, I think it's interesting that you did the research on sari and what it means. And can you talk some and just kind of share with us an overview of your research? And how did you decide to focus on the cultural significance of the sari?
So I think sari cannot be separated from the cultural significance at all. Even if you talk about sari, there is a extreme cultural significance which comes with it, and even like type of drape a sari has. So sari is basically a 6-yard or 9-yard long fabric that's just draped around females' bodies, and even men wear it, but they call it dhoti. There's just different terms for it. And India was a hot and humid, it is a hot and humid country. So people just draped a cotton fabric around their bodies. My research began with sari and colonialism that happened in India, because before colonial rule, or before India was under colonial suppression, people never wore a blouse, which is like they never covered their bosoms, and they just draped the fabric. But post-colonialism, the women started wearing blouse, and the idea of male gaze became a thing, and dressing for male gaze or patriarchal gaze. So I just examined gender identity and like noting the dual function and symbol of femininity and the canvas for fluid expression of gender through my research and my sari. And in addition to this, like regardless of saying this, sari became a symbol of freedom and like freedom struggle that Indians did. And that was a movement of self-resilience and making of khadi. So khadi is also spinning your own yarn using any natural fiber. It's not just cotton, it's silk, wool, cotton. You can even mix two natural fibers. You spin it by hand and you weave or knit it by hand. Khadi it's a term which is sometimes thought of only with cotton or linen or just hand loom. But actually, khadi is anything done with hand from scratch. Start with hand and finish with hand. And that's what I wanted to show as well, where in my paper as well, where it's like self-resilience and self-independence. And that's where my entire research paper began.
Was it sometimes when something is so common and everyday and it's been around forever, sometimes getting information can be difficult, even though it's everywhere. What was it like trying to gather information, facts? And I'm sure you did a lot of, not, anyway, facts, symbols, that kind of thing.
Yes, so I did a lot of research, and most of my primary research came from some of the books. Gandhi's book, Mahatma Gandhi's book, and also I got a lot of information from my grandmothers. So sari, which like you said, it's common to India, but funny thing, I come from a somewhat contemporary side of India, from a city called Ahmedabad in Gujarat, where sari is not a common thing. I did not grow up around my mother wearing sari. I only grew up with my grandmothers wearing the sari. So my perception of sari was distorted itself, being from a younger generation. And then I saw sari in Bollywood media that I see now, which was sometimes overly sexualized or sometimes overly religiously portrayed. So it was a distortion through and framework of distortion through the time. So that's what actually intrigued me to go in this. And my facts came from all the newspapers, all the articles that I read, some people who made films and like people in media who made films about this. And the iconic part about sari was like it was a tool for identity of how a woman wanted the identity to be.
This next image is, this is the work, and I believe this is what you were talking about also. Droupadi's sari. Was that what you were referring to earlier also?
Yes, this was Droupadi's sari, and this is an entire installation for it. And the body, the center of that piece, is Droupadi, my vision of Droupadi herself.
So which came first? The research, the exhibit, the idea for the exhibit, then the research?
It was always the research was first. I started my research in 2023, the beginning of 2023, and after 6 months of research, I started putting everything together, and then it became an entire year of developing these artworks. Yeah.
Yeah, it's kind of hard to tell from this picture. We should have gotten more pictures, but is the figure in the middle like a mannequin with the sari on it?
No, so that figure
Okay.
itself is a sculpture. So I crocheted the pieces, and then the bottom is pleated, because pleating is an essential part of sari. If there was never a pleated, like if the fabric was never pleated, it would be very difficult for the person to walk in that piece. So every sari has some sort of pleats or gathers for the freedom of movement.
Okay.
Yeah.
So the next image we have, I believe, is just the part that's draped down from the ceiling. There you go. So can you talk some about this piece that's separate from the exhibit?
Yes. So this piece is an entirely 11-yard knitted long piece. It's a continuous piece. And this piece was basically an extension of the sari, which is usually a 6-yard long fabric. I wanted to show the endlessness of Droupadi's sari. And Droupadi herself, from the story which I said, was she was victim of male gaze in the court full of men, and the idea of this being separated from her body was like detaching it, and like it was for like how a male gaze would see it. And so this was all about the visual and gaze. But in this piece itself, I added a lot of color, as you can see, and the variation in color. And particularly it was, I wanted to start with a young woman's color in India, which is like pinks and blues, and then that goes to the maturity of color, like browns and reds, and that turns into gold towards the end. I'm not really sure if you can see it through this picture, but I used a lot of gold at the end, which is like getting married or getting like that part of like the phase of her life.
Is that on the right side of the image?
It's on the extreme, yeah.
On the right side,
On the
okay.
extreme, yeah. And that was the entire continuation of the piece, which in itself went away from Draupadi's body. It holds a story of woman's journey, of the ideal woman's journey in India, or what it should be.
Well, as a weaver, I have to ask, talk some about the open spaces, because you could have just wove like plain weave and had it solid, but you didn't. You really chose to open it up and give a little bit more texture. Was that on purpose? And what's the meaning behind that?
So the meaning behind this, and that's a great point you made right here. So if it was woven, I would not be able to unravel it, because all the warps would be like, there's like separate warps when you warp it and you cut it before you start weaving and threading it. If you were to unravel this piece, this would all become one single thread. And that's what I wanted to show, a thread of liberation. So if you were to unravel it, would be one thread with history, which holds time, which holds all the narrative and story that it has, and the meaning, and everything with it. And the open spaces were because, so this piece is installed in the room, it's not on the wall. So if you were to walk around it, it's like a view or a gaze that you can see through it even. So that was the entire idea. The idea when I was making it even was all about the gaze and how anyone, not just male, but anyone would view it with, and how they view it as even today.
Okay. Well, it's funny when you say you can see right through it. And you feel free, and we've talked about this before, feel free to say, Kathy, no, you're full of it. But when you said you can see right through it, I kept going back to the research of sari and what it meant and what it did or didn't do. And were you trying to see through some of those myths of the sari, or am I making a mountain out of a molehill?
No, no, you are right. I'm not sure if we have the images after, but the very first few images we saw, it also had a white sari. So it was seeing through the myths, and how the very beginning, yes, and the one before this one as well, the white
Oh, I
sari, which was
see.
actually an antithesis of the colorful sari I made, because in Indian mythology, there were two characters. One is Droupadi and one is Sati. And Sati is called, the Sati is a word for widow. So when an Indian woman becomes a widow, she's basically lost with everything that she has, her identity even. And what they're expected to do by the society, or was to like not be happy, not remarry, not wear any flowers, not wear any scents or any colors. And they can't even actually perform any ritual or any religious likings that they have. And even today, in today's video, it's not common in these cities, but it's still common in a lot of like rural parts of India, where they are expected to be perpetual mourning and deprivation of societal participation in any form. So this piece was like the sari actually flying and become ghost-like and just like moving, and like her soul leaving the body, which was antithesis of Draupadi's sari, where she actually prayed for her sari to become endless. And in this, I have spun my own yarn, corridor wool, and that's what I've used to make the top part of it, which is like self-reliant, which again goes back to my research of like khadi, spinning, self-reliance, and finding the own self through this piece.
Oh my gosh, there's so much to this. Thank you for sharing this. I mean, I have to admit, I know very little about the Indian culture, and that is so sad that your husband dies and you kind of become invisible, right?
Yeah. I mean, Indian culture is not that bad. I mean, I love my culture. It's
Oh,
amazing, but
absolutely.
I agree, like it is extremely sad where earlier back in the day, if my great grandmother I remember my great grandmother who was 92, 93 years old,
Uh-huh.
and I used to visit her and she was always still wearing white. She never wore color after her husband passed away.
Uh-huh.
And this was back in my great grandmother, and then she educated my grandmothers, and they are all educated women. So that has changed though. But I I have seen it, so it actually resonated with me where it's extremely sad to like lose color from your life.
Yes, yes. Well, and I guess we have the same here, is that you wear black, and I guess
Yeah.
generations ago, same thing. Some women wore black for the rest of their lives. So
Yeah.
you're right, it's not just India. But I'm so glad that you're looking at that. And it's one of those things that if you don't look at it, it just stays the norm, right?
I think it is still the norm in some way. So when I did my research, the funny part was nothing was written down. These are not the rules that were ever written down. These were
Ah,
rules that were formed by society, and that these were the rules that were formed by talking about it in the society. And they were never. If you read Bhagavad Gita, which is like an Indian Bible in a way, um, these things are not written down. These don't
it's just
exist in there.
custom.
It's more empowering than you would think of it to be. And these rules of like mourning or whatever it is, they have become through the societal cultural views on it, which somewhere has been the power play between like gender and enforcing roles and maybe patriarchy, colonialism. It's multiple layers. It's not just one thing.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. Um, so the my next question is, we're going to talk about color, because some
Mhm.
of your pieces, and I mean, this question has kind of changed now that we've been talking, but I wanted you to talk about color because this next piece we're going to show, it has lots of color in it. And then I think about some of the other pieces that you have that are just very pastel. So would you talk some about, was it the use of color in society that you chose these colors, or is it just because of what you're making?
It's many different things and it's many different pieces. So the sari that we saw, the 11-yard long piece that has a lot of color, which is the societal representation of color, which I took with me when I grew up in India, like color of like youth, like woman's youth, and color of like when she matures, and color of like wedding. And Indian weddings are very gold. Like they have a lot of jewelry. And then the Sati piece, which we saw recently, which was all white. I was trying to play with the color of white and spinning yarn and getting that natural look to it. And some pieces I did not have control over color because I literally used my grandmother's brocade saris and I made them into yarn. I spun it into yarn and then I crocheted with it. And then I made
Really?
pleats with it. So some pieces do not have control of color, which I use the colors which I get from the saris.
Okay. You graduated from Parsons School of Design. Given that, um, given your education, what would you tell somebody who's thinking about going to school for design or whatever?
I think so. Before Parsons, I was, like I said, a fashion designer or a textile design. And when I got into Parsons, I just came with an idea, oh, I want to do something. But what it helped me, especially the fiber arts education, was the fact that it helped me really, it gave me confidence, I think, and it gave me a way to navigate all the thoughts that I had.
Mm-hmm.
And then I just like represented that and showcased what I even did not imagine I would be able to do. And validating those thoughts is one of the greatest things that happened with it. Um, and something else which I think I'm very thankful for the education from Parsons was also the connection in terms of like seeing people who are textile artists, seeing people who have a narrative or a voice, and them doing so well in the industry that it validates what I even want to do for in the industry.
Well, I want to go to another piece. It's blue and white, and
Hmm.
it's just it floats through the air. That's why all your works kind of float through the air. And what I loved about this piece was when I was watching it, I thought I could just get lost in this. Here it is. It's just amazing, and there's all this texture and everything. So, just talk to us about this piece.
Well, you are right. This piece was meant to be get lost in because this was about layers of like anxiety and layers of decoding it to actually see every texture that I have. So the top that I have, it's a woven bamboo top, and then I developed all these textures. I knit, I wove, I crocheted, I pleated, I did a lot of fabric manipulation. And the best part about this piece is it's entirely hand dyed in indigo. Even the yarns, so I use mulberry silk here because that's just soothing yarn. And
Mm-hmm.
I have dyed each yarn before even using that in the work in indigo dye that I developed. And the reason for this piece being blue was blue is the color you see in water, you see in sky, and whatever you like, you'll end up staring at those things for hours and hours and hours and get lost in it. And that was the crux of this entire piece, was to like get lost in it, to like to navigate and find a way through it even.
Well, I love how three-dimensional it is. Um, because it's sculpture. And I was thinking as I was looking at so many of your pieces, how you really incorporate the 3D into this. Did you ever at one point in time think, oh, I want to be a sculptor? And then you said, no, I think I'll go into fiber instead.
No, I don't think so. But now that you said it, I think I'd be happy to be a fiber sculpture and nothing else. I think I just love fibers. I just love textile. I just love the feeling of it, or even like being able to touch it and feeling the softness of it. And I think being able to mold that the way I like it and learning how I mold it through and sculpting it, I think that's something I'm very excited about with my future practice and work as well. Being able to make sure that my work stays 3D or it stays like very sculptural.
Well, I just love the change in texture of it. You know, it's very open, and you can feel how it's probably a little bit more rough here, it's a little smoother there, and you just do a lovely job of combining it. You just go from one thing into another. It's just an amazing piece. All
Thank
right,
you.
there's another piece I want us to talk about. It's very colorful, and I think Mandy's going to pull it up. And this may be the piece you were talking about, right?
Yes. So sorry, go ahead.
No, go ahead. I've skipped the image, so that was my bad. But somebody's asking to see it, and I agree, because the one thing I was talking about was how colorful this is compared to the others. So now we can actually see it and talk about it.
Thank you. So the top part of it is actually crocheted with my handspun yarn and also my grandmother's saris. So all the blues, the colorful orange, yellows, and the greens that you see on the right image, that's all my grandmother's saris, which I cut open and I spun them and then I crocheted with them. And beautiful thing about textiles in general, weaving or crochet, is that it has math in it and it has color. So I'm happy either ways. Um, like it's like mix of everything. So I developed this sculpture, and this sculpture stands by itself. I've not added any support in the back. There's nothing like that. And the bottom part of it is entirely pleated, because like I said, uh, pleating is very essential to sari. So I made sure that I replicate a woman's body, the curves, but with notion of sari being there. So the bottom part of it is patchworked with organza cotton, which I dyed with madder root and marigold. It's hand dyed, and then I patchworked that with the saris that my grandmother had as well, the brocade saris, and then I pleated them and developed this into an entire sculpture. So the color, so sorry to add on to that, the choice of color that I had here was only the control over the yellows and reds in the bottom half of it. That everything else was the color which I had from the saris which I had, and I made it work somehow, I think.
So, and I usually don't try to get into technique too much, but I'm dying to ask.
Yeah.
Did you put wire in it to keep the shape?
No, it's like I said, it's math. So all I did was do some math and gave it a twirl. And there's no
Really?
wire. It's not, there's no support, there's no backing. It's literally held by a pinch on the top. I just removed my hand there with Photoshop, but it's just held by a
Oh,
pinch on the top. But it's nothing else.
huh. Well, the color is just amazing. It's beautiful. Thank you so much for sharing that with us.
Yeah, thank you.
Um, so you've gotten several awards. You're a busy woman, I shouldn't say girl. You're younger than me. I want to call you girl, but you're busy. I mean, you just got out of school and you've got all these awards. And one of them was the Surface Design Association Outstanding Student Award. And I would imagine it's probably very exciting to get these awards. You know, it just reconfirms what you're doing and reaffirm. But what do you think the long-term effect will be, or impact on you and your career by getting this kind of reinforcement as, you know, as a student and as coming out of school?
I think of like most of all, everything is like validation at one point, right? I think we as humans, we all need some sort of validation from our loved ones or from strangers, does not matter who. And I think these awards do validate what I think is, or what I make is being seen and heard, and it has a place in this world. And now that you think about it, there's so much going on right now, especially in United States, that even this tiny thing, what I do, matters. So all these awards do end up making me feel empowered to keep making more and like expand. Like I think, yeah, I just graduated. I'm starting my practice. I'm just like got out of school, but it will get me going. It won't make me feel disheartened in any way that, oh, I don't have a future ahead of me. I think these things just help me have a future ahead of me.
Well, with all the comments, I'm looking over at the comments from time to time. You've got a great future ahead of you. You're very impressive, and the audience thinks so too. One thing I was curious about, a couple of things. One, you mentioned dyeing.
Mhm.
How important is dyeing to what you do? Because it seems like when I talk to people, they either dye for a particular reason, like they want a certain color or whatever, or they dye because they really like the process. Where are you in that continuum?
I think I do a lot of techniques. I do a bunch of different techniques and bring them together because I love texture. And sometimes dyeing just becomes easier. For example, indigo dye, which I did, was more approach of like a sustainable aspect for me, where I did not have to go purchase 10 different fabrics or 10 different yarns, which are blue in color, different shades. I just made a one vat of indigo and then I developed various like tones, tonality in indigo. Whereas for madder root and marigold, that was something which I just had with me. I do not go crazy after dyeing, but I do enjoy dyeing if I have the resources and if I can make it work without having to overspend on resources, because I do not even want to buy resources. I want to use what is around me, honestly. So I'm usually mindful of those things as well with my practice.
So did you learn dyeing in school, or was this something you picked up on your own?
I learned dyeing from school, and that's the
Oh,
one
good.
more best thing about school is that I had amazing peers who even taught me how to dye. So all the people who come for master's degree are like they have some or the other skill, and like it was nice because everybody in our textile community is just friendly. No one's not friendly in our community. So they just taught me, and I taught them some things, and it was a barter of techniques.
That is true. I mean, that's true like in a workshop even. It doesn't even have to
Yeah,
be, a semester of school, but just getting
true.
together with other fiber people and bartering. I
Yeah,
like that.
but I,
That's a good way of looking at it. A lot of my friends have bartered with me.
yeah,
Well, wait a
I'm
minute.
sure.
They just taught me. Maybe I haven't gone my side back. Oh, okay. There's another image I want us to talk about, and it's another sculpture of these round balls hanging down. I love these. Now, is this crochet again?
This is crochet, but
Okay.
this had sound in it. So these were actually bells. So
No,
I was,
really.
yes.
All right. Well, you got to tell us about these. These are great.
So I was trying to create a moment of like Zen, like a peacefulness, and hence again the blues and the colors, the tonality, the pastelness in it. But when you moved your hand around it, this was bells. Like you can hear sounds. And I chose bells because in Indian temples, there's always a bell and it's a very peaceful place. Even if you're not religious, you would just like to go sit in some place peaceful. And that was one place that I grew up in, which was peaceful sometimes. So even the bells or ringing the bells was very peaceful notion for me. So I put bells in them while I crocheted them.
So in those little white and blue balls, there's a bell in there.
There's multiple bells in there.
Okay,
Yes.
what's in the silver balls? Are those just silver balls?
Oh, those are the ones on the top?
Yeah, they hang down.
Oh yeah, they were just I beaded them, so they are hand embroidered beaded as well.
No, really?
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. See, again, this is when I wish I was there and I could actually see it because I had no idea. I thought that you just went and bought silver balls. I apologize. How dare I
No.
insult your piece that way? You embroidered that?
Yeah. So
Hmm.
I do a lot of techniques. So I embroidered each string, then I put the bells in the balls. I crocheted those balls, and those are all attached to the base that I again developed, and I embroidered on them as well.
Oh my gosh, that's amazing. That is amazing. Well, I'm curious, you really bring a lot of you into your work. You,
Oh.
you, you talk about your heritage and your experiences and that sort of thing. Do you, and people don't always do that. I mean, that's kind of a brave thing to do, to open up yourself that much to the world. I mean, it's not like you can even say you can see it, but you can't. Anybody can see it, right? So, and was there ever an issue for you about maybe I've shared too much, or no, this is great, I love doing it?
I think I was in between both of those. Like I love doing it. I love talking about some things which I think about, but what my issues with those things was that will people understand it? How will they take to it? Is there an audience for it even? Because at the end of the day, it's about like somewhat, I mean, this is a capitalistic society. At the end of the day, if I do not have resources to fund my own practice, will me speaking my own thought or having my own opinions and showing myself be validated in any way? And that's what got me thinking. But then, like you said, like even being here today or getting the awards, I mean, these tiny things do add up to knowing that, okay, there is an audience for it. I should keep going. And that's my cue to like doing what I love and keep going.
Well, good. That's wonderful. I do want to ask you something else about, again, because you're just coming out of school. There's always a lot of talk about how, and my guild's doing the same thing. How do we get young people into guilds? Because one, we love having the membership, but also it's that combination of generations of new people bringing ideas. And like you said, then the older people who've been weaving longer can share their information or dyeing or
Mhm.
embroidery. But from what I see, you could be teaching a lot of people what you do. But anyway, so how do you see guilds getting younger people in and becoming involved in a guild?
So I do think HGA also has a lot of internships or
Mhm.
like programs. So even those sort of like internship programs or affiliation with some fiber arts program that could get the young people started early on. I think those things help a lot. And having like a lower subscription fee to certain things also help us a lot, being a younger generation or younger people in this industry, because we, like I said, we do not we are on so many loans to be even studying what we study, to do what we love. So getting started, getting the kick started there, I think that's a huge importance. And I think also for me and my lot of peers, we have a background in various fields and not necessarily have any residency experiences or any experiences in art. So
Mhm.
having that trust in us that, okay, giving them the chance to do something or show that, okay, they can provide something of value to the guilds. I think that just like a tiny trust is what will even help us being involved with all the guilds out there.
Well, I know we have a couple of programs around us that we love it when the students come to our meetings and, like to hear what they're working on and, see their work. So I hope it'll continue and we'll all do what we need to do to make that happen. So the big question now is what's next for you? And that's a huge question for you. I mean, just out of school.
Yes. So the next thing for me, I think, is I'm 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 moving to Florida. I got a full-time position there, which I think is good because I can fund my own practice because I definitely do not want to stop practicing. And my most and I my serious, like what I take seriously is getting my work out there
Uh-huh.
through as many platforms, because even that will help me like function through and power through with the practice that I want to build.
Mhm.
And I think maybe developing, I think this project has the Threads of Liberation project with which I was working on has definitely come to an end, but I do want to work on a new series of it and have a research going and like get started with developing something else as well.
Okay, you don't have to tell me where you're moving to, but what part of Florida? Because I know there's a
Oh,
guild out there wanting to know how to get you to come in and
oh,
talk about what you do. Like, are you
I'm
South
moving
Florida, Central?
my towards Miami, Fort Lauderdale side,
Oh, Miami side.
Miami
Okay.
side.
All right, guilds in Florida. You got a new member here coming down there, so jump on that. So we have got lots of questions. Let's take some questions. How about that?
That sounds great.
I think some of them we've already answered. I'm not sure. Michaela, I'm not sure what you're asking, so I'm sorry. If you want, you can send that question back in. Well, this is just a compliment. Catherine Johnson said you are an amazing young artist. There you go.
Thank you, Catherine.
What is the primary fiber of your works? Well, that's a long question. I mean, a long answer because you do everything. Are you attracted to silk or silk blends, more cotton and linen?
I use a lot of wool in my work. So, like I said, I take a lot in context to what I'm around with. So, I have a lot of like farms around me on upstate New York while I was studying here. So I did get a lot of wool, and that's how I started spinning wool and using wool in my work.
Oh, okay. Let's see. I'm not sure what this question is, but I'm going to let you have it and you can go with it, whatever you want to say. Okay. Can you talk about the texture and how you work with the patterns?
So I would say it's very intuitive, the texture and patterns particularly I relate back to the cultural significance of patterns. Some of my work has paisley patterns, and I distorted the paisley to build into the more contemporary narrative of my work in some of my work. So I would take pattern which are very which holds cultural significance in my culture, and then I use those to distort and make it part of my work. And texture, particularly, I depend on the fiber. Whatever the fiber or textile, when I make a textile, whatever it tells me to do, I do that. I let it tell me what to do with it, not the other way around.
Well, I love that because we've had other artists talk about how you've got to listen to the fiber. You got to listen to, don't fight it, go with it. So you're wise beyond your years, dear. Okay, Michaela, you got another question here. I'm not sure what you're asking, but I'm going to say it anyway. Have you seen the movie Water? It's a beautiful film about this very thing. I don't know what this very thing is. Do you know the movie, Aneri?
No, but I will watch it.
I will too. Michaela, come back and let me know what you mean. Michaela's going to be so aggravated with me because I don't understand anything she's saying today. Oh, this is a good question. Cherry Shoemaker wants to know, when you were talking about the sari, is like you said, it's either 6 to 9 feet long. What is the width normally?
So width is 24 to 36 inches wide, 24 for a young girl when she's a short young girl, and 36 to 48 inches. It depends on it depends on the weaver and the width that they go for, and different regions of India as well.
Okay. Good question, Terry. Thank you for asking that. That's good. Oh, this is Karen LeBlanc. Karen LeBlanc is my professional question asker. Thank you, Karen. Can you talk about how you decide how large to make a piece and where you will install or hang it? That's a good question. When you're doing installation pieces, when does that question get addressed?
So for me, it never got addressed until I got done with the piece. I got the pieces made. I literally let my intuitiveness control the pieces I was making, depending on the research and the story I had. And then I figured out the installation of it, which most fits with my narrative. I literally have 10 different installation images. I went up on the ladder, got down, took pictures, and then I figured out which installation really, really makes the viewer gaze at the piece constantly. So and for the pieces being long, it was again based on the story and the topic and what I was trying to say through that piece.
This is from Sue Sari. Hi, Sue. She wants to know if your studies included the source of silk in India, from the silkworm to reeling and involving the whole process of creating the workable fiber.
No, unfortunately, it did not include the source of silk, but a lot of silk comes from Northeast Indian region near Assam. If that near Guwahati, Assam, if that's something of their interest, they can look into it.
Okay. This is Katie Clements. Hey, Katie, thank you for sharing your work. Very inspiring, I have to agree. Did your mother, grandmother, or great-grandmother do any fiber work? Good question. Thank you, Katie.
No, funny thing, my grandmother is a doctor. Never got in fiber, but she loves textiles. She loved collecting saris. So she had so many saris, and now she's asking me to take them to do something with them. So that, yeah.
Oh, I love that. That's wonderful. Janet Medina wants to know, when you spun, did you use a sharka or did a drop spindle, wheel? What'd you use?
I used the wheel.
Okay.
Yeah, I used the wheel, and it was, yeah.
Now, was that one of the things you learned in school? Was that the sharing back and forth of teaching?
Yes, that was sharing back and forth of teaching. I just learned it, and then I picked it up. I just never let go of that wheel. I think it's a very nice meditative process for me. Whenever I'm doing nothing, I'm just on the wheel, like spinning.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. A lot of people say that, how kind of zen-like it is to spin.
Yeah.
Oh, this is from Mary Herrick. How did you spin from the saris? Did you cut it into strips or did you turn it into thread and then spin it? That's a good question.
I did cut it into strips. So I found a way of cutting into strips in a continuous way. So I retained the length of the sari. I did not just chop the
Oh.
strip all the way through. I would chop it and leave like half an inch at the one corner and then go from that same side and leave half an inch on the other side. And that would give me a continuous strip of fabric. And that is what I spun.
Oh, somebody's already mentioned convergence. See, it wasn't me this time. All of you who complain about how much I talk about convergence, but I would go to that class just to see how you spin. Sorry, I would go see that. So, in 26, I want to see you at convergence teaching that.
Perfect.
Oh, this is from Anne Reeves. Water is a novel, then a film by Deepa Mehta about a child marriageable and widowhood in the 1930s India.
Oh, I have heard of Deepa Mehta. But I will definitely read the novel. I've not read it.
Well, I wasn't going to say anything, but I also have to say, this is interesting to hear right now because I'm reading The Henna Artist, and it's set in the 50s. And again, they talk about widowhood and what it means, and
Yeah.
do you exist after that? And so there's another book if y'all want to read something else. It's current. It's now in paperback. Oh, Terry says you can watch Water on Prime Video. All right, still looking. Some of these questions we've already answered. So, if you could go anywhere and make anything, what would be the big project for you? I know you're still young enough that everything would be a great big project for you, but what is something that you would really love to do if you didn't have to work, if you had the money?
I would love to travel. I would love to travel and let the space inform my making as well. But I like, even if let's say I went to some place by the water, which I do not come from. Where I come from, it's like desert. But but even I want the area to navigate my making, but also helping me navigate my personal, social, and cultural view, and helping me process that through what I can make around me. Yeah, I would actually go back to India now that I think about it. I would just love to work with different artists and artisans there, and it would be exciting.
Well, I know me and a lot of other fiber people would love to go to India just because of the fiber
Yeah.
there and the use of color, and yeah.
Yeah, and where I come from, Gujarat, it's the westernmost state in India, and that has the heavy textile industry, and a lot of beautiful artisans who work with embroidery, weaving is a big part of my culture there. So yeah.
We'll all go. Okay, we'll all go together.
Yeah.
So I was thinking about doing this research and kind of looking at the the roles of sex and gender and that kind of thing. Did you get any pushback from anybody, either your family or friends, about the research that you were doing and what you were trying to say with your work?
No, not from my family. My parents were actually very supportive of it,
Oh, good.
my dad started sending me all these materials from Bhagavad Gita and Mahabharata, the epic itself, and he would like send me a page every day and like read it to me sometimes for me. So he would help me. He actually helped me do my research initially. So my parents, I did not get pushback on that, but also I have only presented my work to people who are in art, who are studying culture, gender, everything. So it would be exciting to see taking my research and my work in India and seeing how people relate to it, because I think there might be a lot of pushback. I believe there might be a lot of pushback.
Well, we're at a time, and I'm saying this not as if I know, but from reading this book I'm reading right now. that there's such a kind of a juxtaposition about the role of women in society. Like it's
Mhm.
okay to be a doctor, but at the same time, women, especially out in the rural areas, and not just India, anywhere, women are still considered, man's in charge and that kind of thing. So I was just curious how people react to, looking at the roles and how they change. And I was surprised when you said that Bollywood changed that. I never thought about
Um,
how that would change it.
um, so Bollywood has like good and bad. Some women in Bollywood from 1930s to 1980s did some beautiful films which actually broke the female stereotype of how a woman should be, even in
Huh.
terms of like showing the skin, nudity, everything. And then there was this part of Bollywood where they showed how to be an ideal woman, how to be an ideal mother, and that those sort of movies also exemplified what a widow should be like even. So there's a two sides of it. And currently I think Bollywood is on a side where make a woman sexy in a sari, which I'm always pro, but still. um it's like it's appealing a male gaze at the end. It's media, right? You do
Yeah.
everything for the anybody. It's just views.
Well, I have enjoyed talking with you and I have learned so much. I mean, I did all this research and I still didn't even scratch the surface of what you're involved in. This is amazing. So I look forward to seeing you again on Textiles Tea in the future with everything else you're doing. And of course, we're going to see you at, Convergence in 2 years. And I'll look forward to seeing you there. Thank you so
Yes, thank
much for
you.
being on here today. I really do appreciate it.
Thank you, Kathy. Have a good day, everyone.
You too. Check out Aneri's website. Go check out what she's working on. Hopefully, she'll keep us up to date and keep posting the latest and greatest that she's working on. It's just wonderful to hear, what young people are doing and they're coming out of school and, these new ideas, and the research was wonderful. Just wonderful. So thank you so much, Aneri. We loved having you on here. We want to thank our sponsor, who was a generous anonymous donor. And I hope whoever you are, you enjoyed this episode because I thought it was a gem of an episode and that you got to, you sponsored this one. So thank you so much for being our sponsor today. If you would like to sponsor an episode, you can do so. You can do it by yourself. You can do it as a guild, your business, a group of people getting together. We have a lot of people that like to do that. And you can do that by going to the website at weavespindye.org. And you can purchase a sponsorship for Textiles and Tea there. So thank you again to our sponsor. We do appreciate it. Guess what? This is episode 198. November 12th will be 200. So we've got one more week. And these are the folks who have already donated to our challenge that we're doing, which is I see if I can get this right, $200 donation from 200 people within the next couple of weeks, so we can raise money to celebrate our 200th episode. If you're interested in doing that, please go on and donate, and you can state in the donation that that's what you're doing. It's the 200th episode. Isn't it amazing? I cannot believe we've done 200 episodes, and they've all been so unique and wonderful, like today. So if you're interested, yeah, that's 12,000 minutes of Textiles and Tea. Just amazing. So if you're interested, please join the people who have already donated, and let's get to our goal of 200 donations by November the 12th. It's hard to believe. So thank you all so much who've already donated. We really do appreciate it. You can either go online and donate, or you can call us at the office, which is 678-730-0010, or go online at weavespindye.org. Thank you all so much. If you've missed an episode, you can go back and watch it again. You can watch Aneri today. You can watch that one again. And you can watch it either on HTA Facebook page or you can go to YouTube. If you'd rather do YouTube, I encourage you to subscribe to the HTA YouTube page, because if you do, you'll get a notice every time we upload a new episode. And that's kind of nice to keep track of that. But you can go back all the way back to Mary Zickafoos, which was #1. Our very first interview was Mary Zickafoos. So go back and watch any of those that you want. Next week we have, oh, the other thing I wanted to remind you about, and I think this is so much fun. We're doing a thing where you can go on Instagram and post what you liked about Textiles and Tea. Maybe an artist that you saw for the first time, or maybe you saw an artist that you absolutely loved and it was great to see them, or you learned about a new material or a new craft or something like that. But you can go to Instagram at Instagram Insta HGA. It's in the text in the chat. Insta HGA, and you can post what you liked about our 200th episode. If you have one that really spoke to you and meant a lot to you, I would love to see those. That would be fascinating to see. Now, I hope you all will do that. I hope you'll go on and share with us what was important for you. Anyway, it's been an amazing week. I hope you have a wonderful week. Next week, we have an incredible basket artist by the name of Matthew Tommy. He does these beautiful organic, but also some unique stuff. So I hope you'll join us next week for him. And again, happy tea.